سینه خواهم شرح از فراق تا بگویم شرح درد اشتیاق. It's a line written some 800 years ago. That I'm looking for a heart that has been shattered into 1,000 pieces. سینه خواهم. I'm looking for a heart, searching for a heart. شرح از فراق. That has been torn into 1,000 pieces. تا بگویم شرح درد اشتیاق. So I can look at this heart and tell them my story. That as a human being, I am broken. I'm looking for another human being who's brave enough to confess that they too are broken. So two broken people can sit and share their broken stories with one another. That is what we call a cult, a community, a communion. You know, but when everybody's walking around pretending to be like whole, then what you have is someone pretending to be whole, another knows that they're broken, and then they want to talk. But it's not going to go anywhere. So if you consider that human beings from the moment they're born, that they are confused, frustrated, anxious, angry, for a whole host of good reasons. You know, none of you should ever go on YouTube, watch a New Age teacher or a guru tell you that you should not be angry. That anger is a product of your mind. And if you get rid of your mind, you get rid of anger. And though it may be true on one level, the truth is you have every right to be angry. In fact, you need to be angry. If you're not angry, you can't be creative. But you have to have the tools to create anger in a way that's positive. You know, express it. And so you ask yourself, okay, why would someone create music? Why would someone desire to beat the drums when they're going into battle? You know, why does someone create when they're sorrowful or angry or depressed? It's a tool with which you vent. It's no different than writing. Why do you write? You want to express something, you know, either for yourself or other people. And music is very much the same way. And if I, again, forgive me for being a plagiarist, but I think Freud put this very eloquently. If you want to survive in this world, you have to play the games of society. You have to. You're not going to like it. Society is mean, it's uncivilized, and it's going to push you into these holes, and you have to adapt. And when you play rough with society, you're going to be chewed and spat out. And you don't want that. You don't want to be an outcast. So you will do what you can to conform. That's a lot of pressure on you. You know, I mean, for those of us in this class who have children, and that's 2 of us, or 3 of us, or 4 of us, that's what we do to our kids. I mean, there is so much you can take them screaming and shouting and breaking things. At a certain point, you scream at them. And it's a shock for them. You know, I've been running around wild for the past 2 hours, you've said nothing. All of a sudden, you scream. What the hell is that? A run out of patience and capacity. And now, little by little, the child has to adjust. Don't know why, but they're not going to have fun adjusting. That's pressure. Then you go to school. You know, the body of a 5-year-old needs to run around and break into things. You know, destroy things. But they're forced to sit for 5-6 hours. Well, that's pressure. Then you go home. You want to watch TV, but the parents say, you know, this culture, social media, this and that, no TV. They don't have any downtime. That's pressure. Then once in a while you look at your parents and say, Mom, why am I here? Why did you give birth to me? What am I supposed to do? Am I a man or a woman? You know, am I Indian or am I American? Pressure. And then at a certain stage, you're like 18 or 19, you realize the sexual hormones are just raging through you, and you say, what the hell is this? Well, you can't just go out there and just jump on things. First, you got to say, hi, how are you? Really not interested in hi, how are you? You just want to jump them. But you got to do it in a civilized manner. So pressure keeps added. Keeps adding, and then you realize at the moment you have sex with someone, well, there's the bonding factor. But you don't want a relationship, you just want to have sex. Now you got to find a way to get out. Or if you don't want to get out, to make it work, because you're dealing with two 18-year-olds, bundle of confusion, trying to make something that's impossible to work. Okay? And then you go to school. You take these ridiculous classes. That's pressure. I mean, that's what it means to live in society. It's a never-ending assault on the human psyche. Now, if you're lucky, and you're Carlton, like Prince of Bel-Air, where your father is rich, he's a lawyer, you live in a gated community, even though you're black, you never taste racism, you know. Everybody says hello to you, respects you, even though inwardly they may not like you. Okay? If you have that privilege, fine. But even if you are privileged, no one is free of the slings and arrows of life. Eventually, something is going to go inside you won't like, you know. So, in this imposed environment where forces are just going to assault you on a daily basis, well, you're going to hang out with people. Your parents, your siblings, your friends, your kids, your wife, your husband, grandparents. Life does this nasty thing to you. The people you love slowly will begin to die. If not die physically, they will die emotionally. You will look at them and say, I don't feel anything for you anymore, and yet I have to be in this life. Why? You want to get out, but maybe you were raised in a religious environment. Or maybe not, but you have some moral standards for yourself. I'm just not going to abandon my wife or my husband or my kids. You know, good philosophers suffer in silence, as they say. And we experience this on a daily basis. You know, you take care of your car, after a while it becomes irrelevant. You love ideas, after a while it becomes irrelevant. You love your parents, after a while you say, I will talk to them once in a blue moon. And God forbid, if you love your parents, you love your companion, you love your kids, and you get this bad news that, your mom died. The hell do you do now? Now you got to deal with grief. Now you got to deal with abandonment. Now you got to deal with loneliness. Now you got to deal with rage. It's a lot of pressure. And then add to it something that Arnold Schwarzenegger was talking about a few days ago. You have this memory of yourself as, a bodybuilder. The physique of a Greek god. And life slowly turns your body into mush. You still have the memory of you having won like 7 world titles. And this is the outcome. You just flab. And you try to lift weights, but your body say, no man, you're no longer 20. Now you got to deal with old age. It's no longer things on the outside. It's just your body now slowly beginning to betray you. And then you get sick. There was a movie called Yes, not with Jim Carrey. I think Sally Porter was the director of them. It's a really, really good movie. It's like sitting back and listening to 2 hours of poetry. I'm sorry, it's not the movie Yes. It's Elegy. Penelope Cruz and that other guy. So there's a scene where this 30-year-old, this man is now in bed with this ex-companion of his. They're having sex. There's a moment of honesty. She looks at him and says, I have all these wrinkles now, my face, my body. When I go in the streets, when young people look at me, they don't look at me because I'm attractive. They look at me with pity. They feel sad for me because I'm no longer attractive. And there is a sadness in her voice. You still want to be looked at as something as attractive, someone desiring you, but that's not the case. They look at you and say, oh, I wonder when she's going to get on her wheelchair. Does she live in a nursing home? Does she have a companion? Does she have a nurse? And you have to deal with that. And then imagine you get really, really sick and the doctor says, your body can't survive cancer. And then you still have to go to Costco and say, okay, do I want a coffin that has Bluetooth, or a coffin that has air conditioning, or a coffin that has nothing? And so when you look at the totality of human life, you realize that there is not a single moment, especially if you're aware, there is not a single moment that life is not there to assault you in some shape or form. And then you say, okay, what the hell do I do with all of this? And I think the only tool you have to keep yourself sane is art. Even if you have the talent to be bored creatively, keep looking at me. But have a fertile imagination where you can think about what you're going to have for lunch. You're being an artist. Escape from boredom. It's beautiful. Imagine if you couldn't do that. What are you going to do? You're going to suffer for the next hour, and that's devastating. We don't do music because we are talented or because we are creative. We are artists because life is assaulting. We don't have sex because you love your companion. Your body demands that it be touched, it be held, it be noticed and recognized. And we use another human being to do that for us. And there is nothing wrong with it. I mean, why the hell would someone go and get a tattoo? Are they crazy? Well, in some ways, perhaps. But it's no longer the tradition that comes from Egypt. Why would someone get a tattoo? Because they have lost their mother and they want to write down her name on their bicep. Why? There's a good amount of longing and rage and anger and disappointment there. And that's the best I can do. I can't write a sonnet for my mom or sonnet. You know, the best I can do is just have someone write something that's permanent. And Nietzsche was right. If there was no art in this world, life would not be worth living. You know, I read the Epic of Gilgamesh day after day after day for one reason. He was a lonely man some 5,000 years ago. And maybe that's where I am right now. I read the story of the Buddha not because it's interesting, because I can find my own story in his ideas. And it gives me comfort that I'm not the only goddamn person on this planet who goes through life with pain. The Buddha went through it some 3,000 years ago, and perhaps his insights can help me. Yeah.
Would you say that, like, being an artist or being artistic is like natural or inherent, like emotions are, or it's something that you just talk about it as a tool created through pressure? Is it more something that you'd say is socialized or emotion?
I think it needs to be socialized because every art form needs its own language, and that language needs to be codified. It needs to be universalized, so anyone who is in that particular craft has the alphabet as to how to become very, very proficient in that particular craft. So in some ways, yes, it needs to be socialized, okay? I used to have this very intense allergic reaction to people doing yoga. But when you understand the pressure placed upon people in the 21st century, I say, listen, even if it's for 10 minutes, you want to have your Zazen moment, go knock yourself out. Just know that when you come out of the shop, the miseries are going to be waiting for you. They're not going to go away, you know. But if you want, it's like a drug. If you want to use yoga as a drug for 10 minutes to find some release from the miseries of life, the confusions of life, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, But here's the thing you need to know about the evolution of art. It's something that Native Americans are really good at. I'm not sure if I haven't kept up with the tradition, but they refuse to sign or autograph their name at the bottom of any creation because they believe that if I'm creating something, it means the gods above looking down, they like me, they find me a proper vehicle or instrument for what is to come through me, to come out of me. And so let's just say it happens to be a painting, okay? And I'm not going to go against my tradition. I'm going to uphold the value of my tribe. So whatever art I create is going to be further encouragement, okay, protection of my tradition. And so you would never know who the artist is who created this beautiful painting that when you look at, it connects you to about 2,000 years of tradition, rituals, and customs and philosophies. Today, the story is very different. And it took place around the 14th or so century with the Renaissance, when religious ideas began to kind of loosen their grip on people's psyche. And humanism, which is again another invention of the 14th or so century, that we no longer focus on God, we now focus on human beings. And then people began to look at themselves differently. You know, the idea that you're born in sin, everybody's on an equal platform. When you believe that Jesus Christ came down here because you sucked as a human being, and he came down here to kind of be a teacher, and hopefully you could follow his teachings. It doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. It's kind of like Stoicism. You can be Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, and be a philosopher. You could be Epictetus, a slave, and be a great Stoic. Okay. What happened with Renaissance and humanism was that all of a sudden you began to assume that your shit doesn't stink, that you're exempt from what all the other people go through. Let someone come in and paint your portrait and then sell that, make lots of money because you're special. And now what you have is you have the Miley Cyruses, you have the Jay-Z's and the Beyoncés, you have the Eminems, giving us the illusion that they are autonomous, independent, and they don't go through the stuff that you and I go through. Okay. Art now is privatized. Art now is secularized. Art's function was to elevate your psyche, to have you connect yourself to some spiritual realm. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in that stuff, but that's used to be its function for many thousands of years. Now, even when Hurricane Katrina happened, one of the things that Jay-Z and Beyonce did, despite knowing how people are suffering, you know, they were starting to sell T-shirts. People who had no money, you know, like Trump, throwing around paper towels to people who are devastated. So when the moment art become privatized in a capitalistic environment, what you have now, art beginning to lose its value which once had, which was religious and spiritual and psychological and philosophical in nature. Now it becomes just bling bling. It's part of money, getting more famous. So it really, for the most part, depends on where you come from, what your temperament is, the sort of culture you have that creates a certain form of art. You know, right now you can't create art that has depth. It just sits in the garage somewhere gathering dust. It has to appeal to the popular audience, which is this one. For those of you in this class who are tattoo artists, and I had a student He's now dead. He was in prison for about 17 years because he got caught doing some things. In prison, he had killed 7 people, but if no one sees you killing anyone, you're not guilty. He developed lung cancer and he was released on good behavior. He lived in a halfway house here in Oakland. And then he was a student of mine for a couple of years before he passed. And he was part of the Aryan Brotherhood. He had tattoos from all the way from his toes to the crown of his head. And they were all brotherhood symbols. And it was a time where we had, at least in my classes, about 80% of my students were people of color. And someone asked him if he was willing, if they were to fork out the money, if he was willing to remove all those tattoos because they were so offensive. And he said at the time when he got the tattoos, he actually believed that his position about life, his position about people of color were right. That as a Caucasian, he lives in a very elevated position in life. He is above the brown, the black, the yellow, and the red. When he served time and he came to realize that his best friend, in fact, was an African American who saved his life on many occasions, and then in the halfway house, there were many brown people who had become his very good friends. He changed his position. And he said, my tattoos are a symbol of the sort of an idiot I was. And I want to make sure that I look at myself every single day to make sure I never become the person that I was. I wonder if he was to become a tattoo artist, if a young kid was to walk into the shop and say, I want the swastika to be tattooed on my forehead, if he would do it for money, if he would try to educate this young kid, if he would sit the young kid down and tell him a story that his father was the biggest narcotic dealer in Northern California, the FBI caught him and the son, they spent many years in prison. They continue to imagine that their race is the superior race. Eventually, he was educated in prison. He came to realize he was wrong about almost 100% of everything he believed in. And that's the thing, that the moment you come to a position where you realize something about you has understood something very profound about your past, about your present, about your future, about your psychology, if you're still willing or have the capacity to sell yourself for a couple of dollars, you know, that's art. In the sense that if you haven't really grasped the big picture, you're more than willing to sell yourself to anything. If, on the other hand, you have understood a few things about the big picture, it's going to be very, very difficult. It doesn't mean you won't fall, you won't slip, but it's going to be very, very difficult for you to go back and sell your craft for a few bucks. So, anyone else? We have like 5 minutes. Yeah.
So would you say that modern art is no longer an expression of itself, but more of a reflection of the society?
Plato had once remarked, and I don't know if he's right or wrong. Well, he's right. Let me not be open-minded. That the individual is a product of society and the society is the product of the individuals. So when you look at society, American society, it's divided, it's violent, it's aggressive, it's independent, it's diverse. And by diverse, I don't mean it's like an orchestra where everyone who holds an instrument knows when to play in harmony with other players. Diversity in the sense that you have milk, then you have like a hamburger, then you have milk, then you have ice cream, then you go home and you have diarrhea. But while you're eating, you call it diversity. And then you lay in bed because you're sick, you've eaten too much, things that just don't mix well. So when people say, I love Oakland because it's diverse, I'm going to push back to diverse in what way? Is it like harmonious? Is it like divisive? What sort of diversity are you talking about? So when you realize that what we have is just a house profoundly divided unto itself, say, okay, what sort of art and artists do we have? And you have all these different categories of arts. You have arts that run into conflict with other artists, consider rap music, how it started. It was about social justice, And you had to be a keen observer of society, of your own tradition, of your own people, to come up with good lyrics. And then you would never exploit women the way they've been exploited now in, say, modern music. Okay. Now, I don't know if you consider, for example, rap today. Sure, there are some rappers out there who are really, really good, but there are 95% who are just garbage. And most of them argue by the time the public comes to realize that my lyrics are trash, I'm a millionaire. I don't really care what they think. I'm just here to sell, And so you can find trash. You can also find things that are profoundly valuable. It just depends on whether you have eyes and ears that can pay attention. And that depends on how hard you work to refine the way you think, the way you see, and the way you hear things. And the less refined you are as a human being, the more you're going to gravitate towards trash. It's dating, If you're an idiot, well, you're not going to go out with someone who's mature. You're just going to continue going out with idiots. And if you're really, really mature, well, you can't find anyone mature, so you have to be, you get depressed and you have to take some Prozac. That's what you pay for being a little mature. So either way, there's nothing to look forward to. Anyone else? We have a couple minutes. Yeah? You need to go?
No, I was going to ask, is maturity always associated, participated with age? Like usually people that have baby face that are really short, or is it just idiots on people?
So there are different stages. Let's just consider you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
You sure? Positive? This is just a hypothetical. It's I don't know you, so none of it is factual. Imagine that you like to read a lot of books. Let's say you're just a communist. You like to read, Das Kapital every night, and you listen to Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn and all that stuff. And you come to class and you raise your hand and you ask all these beautiful questions. And you've also studied capitalism and this and that. Okay. So you're not a typical 19-year-old. Okay. A 19-year-old asks, what kind of beer is good for me to drink? Where can I go to find someone to, That's a typical 19-year-old. You, on the other hand, you're like a different world. Once you take a sociology class, forgive me for my digression, you'll get to a section called social deviance. If the instructor is any good and they can express the ideas relatively well. And you realize that even if you're a thief and you steal TVs, you need to have a good amount of maturity to know where to sell your TVs. So wrongly, you're not interviewing a cop and then selling a cop your TV, because then you'll get arrested. So you need a good amount of maturity in first stealing, not getting caught, then selling your TV to the right person, okay? So maturity exists at all different levels and in all different crafts. So in regards to you, for example, let's say you have all these beautiful ideas in your head. That's mature in one level. You have to graduate from Laney. You're struggling with stats. But you don't drop the class. You allow yourself to be exploited by the system. And so certain parts of communist ideas, Marx ideas, make sure you're never exploited. You're a human being with dignity and self-respect. Always protect that. You sit in the class for 16 weeks. And you realize, well, yes, you have the maturity to read the ideas, to embrace the ideas, to love the ideas. But you're not yet mature enough to apply the ideas to your life. Why? Because you also have this maturity to understand that capitalism, if you're not careful, it will destroy your life. So you say, you know what? On Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm going to put Marx on the cross, nail him, bury him, make sure he doesn't rise from the dead. Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 10:45, because I need to be exploited. Because I need to graduate. Now, what happens is when you get to be 40, hopefully by then, you have $100,000 in savings, you have 5 houses, and you say, you know what? I'm only going to get involved in things that, as Marx would say, are parts of my species self, parts that are creative, organic. Okay. Now, just in case you're not received by society, well, you don't need society. You're self-sufficient. Just in case you have a neighbor whose rent went up 5,000%, you don't need to worry. You know why? You have paid your mortgage. You have money to pay your rent. So the point I'm trying to make, maturity at different, and look, at a certain point, your wife says, God damn it, I want my kitchen to be fixed. And you say, honey, I'm a minimalist. I want to be okay with what we have. And then you realize, yes, you're a great Marxist, but you have a wife who's suffering, and you don't give a shit about her. That makes you a piece of shit as a husband. Which means that you're very, very immature. You know, she's 90, she has to bend, get that pot from that cabinet, and then that pot is heavy. By this time she stands up, she's got to go to bed. She's got a backache now. So the point I'm trying to make is that different stages of life, you need different maturities to survive it. At 19, it's great that you can read, but you have zero capacity to really understand what you're reading. And then at the age of 40, you realize most of the things you've read, they're useless. It's like a relationship. Oh, well, that's a good ending. So, my apologies again for being all over the place today. I will see you on Wednesday. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you Wednesday.